I'm Greg DeRocher, and this is Chamber Web TV, focusing on election 2018 and the candidates from both Cambridge and Kitchener South-Hespeler. Here in our studio today is a candidate for the Green Party from the riding of Kitchener South-Hespeler, David Weber. David, good to see you again, my boy.
Pleasure is mine as always, Greg.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm... How do I look?
Oh, you look great.
I feel
and we
great.
both do.
Yes, we do. We both do look great. David, why politics?
Oh, you know what? I wouldn't have even dreamed that I would be on this path
Of course.
6-7 years ago. Yeah, it led me here. 30 years of policing in Waterloo Region. I have seen, and like most of us officers historically, we used to be the law and order party supporters.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yeah,
typically conservatives. But you know what? I've seen poverty, lack of affordable housing, homelessness, drug addictions due to largely coexisting mental health issues that are not being addressed. And we can throw money at it, police resources, we can try to arrest our way out of it. That doesn't work. Only if we actually put the resources on the front end and address these issues will we stop paying egregious amounts of energy and money just pushing the problems around.
Yeah.
So that's really what motivated
Band-Aids
me.
are not intended to heal.
No, they're not. And serving the community has been great, and I've enjoyed doing policing for the majority of my career. But I just realized that there are very much more important ways to serve. I believe in my heart, and this is how it is right now. It's calling me.
Well, congratulations on 30 years of service with the Waterloo Regional Police. That's
Well, thank you.
that's it's wonderful. So you're obviously you have a track record of giving back. Because in essence, even though it was a paid job and it was a career, you were giving back to your community.
Yeah. Well, I also believe it's important to volunteer in the community.
Yeah.
There are very many great organizations like the Ray of Hope that I have participated with, and I want to participate more in the future. But there are ways that all of us can participate in the community and get involved, and there's so many needs that need to be fulfilled.
Well, let's talk about a way that you hope is in your future. Maybe you don't hope it. I don't know. Most politicians sit here and say, well, you know, not sure I want to wade into that. If you look at the political environment now, not just in Ontario or Canada, but globally, you know, one would think you're a little off center
Yeah.
if you want to become a politician. But I really believe, and I think, you know, the vast majority of people get into politics by accident, and it's because of their passion for giving back. So I congratulate you for taking that step forward.
Thank you, Craig.
And certainly appreciate what you've done in the past for our community. But let's move forward.
Awesome.
The electricity file. First of all, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce has vote prosperity going on. It has 4 pillars: strengthening business competitiveness, fostering job creation, building healthy communities, improving government accountability, all of which you kind of talked a little bit about in your preamble here. But I want to concentrate on those 4 pillars because that's what the chambers across the country and our province and businesses across the province have really kind of framed as really important things from their perspective. So the electricity file is on everybody's mind.
Yes.
I think the Green Party, you know, what's really interesting is everybody would look at the Green Party and say, well, you guys have all the answers to electricity. Green power, all of that kind of stuff, you know, environmental issues. But maybe you don't.
I would
but
think-
maybe you do.
I think, Greg, a lot of people have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth about green energy because the way our Green Energy Act was so poorly rolled out.
Well, and
They
let's
didn't
talk
come to-
about that then.
They didn't come to us and talk about how to do
They
it
didn't
to
come
get
to you?
buy-in.
They didn't
Not,
co-
not that I'm aware of. I don't think they addressed
Well,
the issue with us.
I've had the opportunity, as you know, to interview your leader, Mike Schreiner, on our radio show with my colleague Ian McLean, and you know, he has lots to say about everything that's going on.
Yes.
And I guess, a benefit to him right now is he's kind of on the outside looking in, so he can continually throw stones without having any come back at him, which is sometimes nice to be in a position. But I know Mike dearly wants to get Greens into the cabinet. So,
Yes.
but the electricity file, especially when it comes to the surplus electricity. So now the Green Energy Act, if it did have anything positive, it started to produce lots of energy for the province of Ontario.
Absolutely.
We've been really good stewards because we've cut our energy usage down dramatically in Ontario. That's the new thing, LED lights. Let's use less. Why? Because it hurts us every month we get the darn bill. That's why we're trying to use less. But now we have this surplus energy. And what Ontario businesses are saying is, why are you selling it to Michigan and New York and Quebec? Why can't we buy the surplus energy?
Absolutely. The Green Party of Ontario is made up of members that get together and they talk about issues and then they make policy. So it's not a leader that makes the decision, and when a change of leadership happens, the whole platform can change.
Right,
We've seen that recently. It's the general membership to get together and discuss things and look at the best practices and the best approach. And I think for the most of the time, for the most part, they get it right.
Yeah.
Nobody is perfect, of course. But
No.
one thing we've come up with is that the fact that we've got Pickering Nuclear Power Plant. It's set to expire its permit in August.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than extending the permit, if we just let it expire, that would get rid of basically our excess energy, which perhaps maybe you don't want to get rid of if you want to give it cheaper to business. But when we do have excess energy, we should give it a first choice to business. Mm-hmm. But I would prefer that we get rid of Pickering, let it expire, and then also we don't spend that $13 billion that's going to be required, the estimate price, it could be more, to rebuild Darlington when it needs to be rebuilt. Because by doing that, we're tripling the cost at the source of hydro.
Yeah.
When we can import excess hydro from Quebec at 5 cents a kilowatt, why would we invest $13 billion to rebuild Darlington, but they then say we're going to need to pay 16 cents a kilowatt hour? So our rates are going to triple, or we're going to keep on artificially subsidizing them, which means increased debt, increased taxes. You can't have it any other way. So
It is really an interesting file because electricity is essential. We all had a little bit of a windstorm last week or so.
Yeah.
Some of us were out of electricity, and I can't tell you how inconvenient that is.
you realize how dependent you are on
Oh
it once
my
it's gone.
gosh, drives me crazy. No TV, no. Where are we going to eat? And we're looking and thinking, well, if we're out of power and we want to go, now we have to go out to get something to eat. Well, who doesn't have power? Because we can't go to that restaurant. And then you go to the restaurants that do, of course, they're packed. It's really an inconvenience. So we need reliable and cost-effective electricity.
Yeah, affordability is an issue that I'm hearing a lot at the door, and nobody seems to realize that regardless of which of these political parties wins the day, it looks like they're all ingrained into
our bills
doing
are going to
what
look the same.
the nuclear lobby,
Wow.
they're listening, and they're all willing to do Darlington, and only the Greens are willing to do it differently.
Yeah.
And if we were to have 1 or 2 or 3 Greens elected in the legislature to speak up for that, the media would probably come and pay a little bit more attention to us, rather than when Mike Schreiner's out in the front lawn crying on the legislature doorsteps, that he doesn't get nearly the same attention as he would if he was in the House or if I was in the House. And we'd be able to say, hey, look, our government of the day here, they're looking at doing this plan when this would be a much more affordable, practical way of doing it. So I think it'd be really an improvement if we could just get a few in there.
Well, something needs to be done with it because we need it, and we can't afford it, and we got to do something about all of those issues. So it's quite interesting. That is among the highest concerns business has, is their energy costs. There's no question. Bill 148 didn't help when it came in. Adding tons of more pressure on the output for business, and of course, government's always wonderful to impose these. Takes no risk on themselves,
Right.
just imposes it onto a certain sector of society, and doesn't worry about the outcomes. Unfortunately, business, not the owners, not the people behind business, but a business, a corporation, is cold and calculated. It simply says, don't spend any more than you bring in the door.
And some businesses are running a really tight margin.
Yes.
So if you add a lot of excess cost to them, it's
They have
it's
no
difficult.
wiggle room. The
No.
only wiggle room they have is with their staff. And so they have to go down to part-time, or they have to get rid of people. And that shouldn't be our objective. That's certainly not the business's objective. It shouldn't be theirs.
Well, even going part-time, Greg, if I might just interject here, when you change the legislation such that the part-timers get the same kind of benefits as the
Yeah.
full-timers when it comes to holiday time, and with the increase in the wages, you're increasing all the cost dealing with EI, WSIB,
Yeah.
et cetera, you can have businesses that are forced out of even being able to function.
Yeah.
And I think that is a risk, which kind of brings me to how do we solve that? And I think the Green Party idea of the universal basic income that we've been advocating for so many
Yeah.
years, I think that is really where we need to go.
I would agree, because you know what that does is that really targets those who need it the most.
Yes.
You know, that, and the whole problem with Bill 148, not that, you know, $15 an hour, you know, there's no question about it. It'd be wonderful if every business can absolutely afford to do that. Some can't. There doesn't seem to be any problem with that. Even businesses have said to me, look, Greg, I don't have a problem with it. If I had some more notice, that would have been a lot better for me to be able to budget for it. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, there's only, the government's own statistics, there's only 8% of those earning minimum wage who are living in poverty. The rest of them are all second and third incomes in their household. So, you know, the basic, you know, income that you're talking about would really address that with that 8%. It would lift them up, and that's really what this was supposed to do. But
You're
it's
absolutely
not.
right, correct. You're correct.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, Hugh Segal, a conservative senator, he was
Yep.
pushing for this. Milt Freeman,
Yeah.
he had advocated for this. You know, I almost hate to say Richard Nixon's name, but he actually advocated
Yeah.
for it at once.
Oh,
upon a
it's
time.
across party lines. There's lots of support.
Yeah, so the benefits are obviously there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of putting it into motion and doing it. And I think we've talked about it long enough. The pilot project that we're doing with the Liberals is still going through a needs base, dealing with people that are on social assistance as opposed to the working poor. And it would be interesting to see if we were to have a guaranteed livable income, or guaranteed universal income rather, for people that are in that 8%, the working poor, adults that have this poverty from low wages, if they were given some breathing room, would some of them go and pursue more education and better themselves? Would they be able to involve themselves in community in a better way, in a healthier way? And what would be the outcome from that? And I would like to have seen that from this study.
Yeah.
So it's just falling a little short, I think, of what we could have been
Yeah.
looking at.
I think it goes all the way back to what your initial comments were about mental health and health in the community. You know, we put Band-Aids on it. $15 an hour was a Band-Aid.
Yes.
We're not really addressing the poverty issue. And if you really want to address a poverty issue, then let's get down to business and address the poverty issue. And business is right behind everybody in doing that. So anyway, let's leave that. We'll solve those problems when you get into the legislature.
Well, I was just about to ask you to run because you get it.
Fostering job creation is another one of our pillars. Modernizing the apprentice system. And we could talk a little bit about that, but according to your website, your focus seems to be all on green jobs. Manufacturing is still 20% or more of our economy. Green jobs, I think, are great. They're an evolution of manufacturing for sure. But the focus, really, from the Green Party's perspective, is all about that. What about everybody else?
Greg, I'm just going to put it to you that if a business operates with the least amount of energy, most amount of efficiency, uses the least amount of product with the least amount of waste, that it's efficient, it is going to be more competitive than somebody that buys a lot of natural resources and throws most of it into the waste heap. So,
Great answer, by the way.
well, I think that is true. Then I think you mentioned a little bit about the apprenticeship programs. I just want to mention here that, you know, the Green Party has looked at the fact that we should leverage the Ontario school, or the college application service, so that when people are applying for apprenticeships, they can more easily find employers that will mentor them. And that is a hurdle that a lot of are having difficulty with. But I think it's worth mentioning why it's difficult. A lot of mentors, when they have an apprentice, they're gone for 6 weeks, a year to school.
Yeah.
There's loss of revenue. So if we're not going to partnership with the people that are willing to do the training to alleviate some of that cost, that's a disincentive. And the other thing is, at the end of an apprenticeship program, you often have people that are now full journey people, and they're dangled a carrot by another corporation, a bigger corporation, and they're kind of taken away, stolen away. And that, obviously is a very frustrating thing if you're a mentor trying to teach somebody and to have them in your company. So in the same way that the Greens would like to see doctors given an incentive that we would help them and pay for some of their education if they would commit to so many years working in Northern Ontario. I think that perhaps we should have some kind of an incentive like that where an apprentice will say, okay, you know what, if you're going to be so kind and to train me for 4 years, for an equal number of years afterwards, I should be committed to you.
Yeah, it's a good
and I
idea.
should work for you. And I think that would
That
go a
might give
long way.
employers a little bit, they'd be happier with that, because they get, they're not
Absolutely.
spending all this money on training and then they walk off to the next.
And that might be
greatest
enough
job.
of an incentive there, and it really wouldn't cost the
Yeah.
government anything. It's just setting the framework,
yeah.
setting the ground to say, these are the rules we're going to
Yeah.
play by. You're going to get helped, but you got to pay back a little bit.
Yeah. Finally, a government program that costs nothing for anybody. It's interesting. How do we create a competitive environment then for manufacturing when the U.S. is plummeting tax rates down to the ground, and they're offering incentives and they're saying, come on, let's, because we still need to be, here's the thing that I've always said. The tech community in the Waterloo region is great.
Yes.
There's no question about it. We love it. But we can't only be thinkers. We have to be doers as well. We have to make the stuff they think about in Waterloo. And the reason is if we become a society of thinkers and not doers, then those who do, which might be the United States or China or India or Mexico or wherever, they hold the balance of power on our economy,
Yes.
because we can't get the products out unless they do it.
Yeah.
So how do we compete down there? How do we become green? How do we do all of these things, David?
Big umbrella.
Yeah,
This might seem a little idealistic. I'm going to say it anyway.
sure.
We right now have a situation, this is the problem. We have governments competing against each other for the lowest wages on behalf of the employers, the multinational corporations that are willing to pay a lower wage in the States to take jobs from Canada, Mexico a lower wage with the free trade so that you can actually make something in Malaysia and then ship it here, and it's even cheaper to produce. It's a race to the bottom for wages. It's not good for the employers, for the employees. Certainly not good for our economy
Right.
and for the workforce. I think this is the idealistic part. We need to stop electing officials that will be in the back pocket of, say, like the nuclear lobby to do the Darlington issue instead of doing what's right for the taxpayer. We need to start electing officials that will say, we as a province, we as a country, and our friends in the south of the border, they need to do it as well. Need to start saying, what is the good for the jobs? What is good for the people? What is good for the environment? There's a triple bottom line here. And when you take care of all three together, and you do this without a race to the bottom, but you're actually running your businesses and you're running your government that treats and respects all these facets together and values the holistic integrity of the whole system, we will have a better government, we will have a better nation, we will have a better world. But it's up to us to stop electing the people that are greedy, that do their jobs and then end up sitting on boards at major corporations and lining their pockets at your and my expense.
Don't lose that ideology if you get elected, David, because
No.
I think
I'm agreeing.
you're exactly right. That something changes
Yeah.
when people get elected. Something changes, and I don't know whether it's the system, the environment, the ivory halls, as they always called it. I have no idea, but I think you're exactly right. Something, and we'll get into that in a minute too. But building healthy communities. You talked a little bit about mental health in the end. You're a former police officer. You've been called to a myriad of circumstances where it was probably quite clear to you, maybe even before you got there, that mental health was going to be the problem.
Yes.
I think from the Ontario Chamber's perspective, because we're starting to really focus on that, the Cambridge Chamber is starting to focus on it. We want to create a toolkit where small businesses and the owners of small businesses can use this toolkit to identify mental health issues within their workforce, but more importantly, be able to have the tools where they can go and get help for their employees.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know, I think from our perspective, and you touched on it, you know, this is about the only way you can solve the problem is to solve the problem at its root cause. And so we can put bandages on the opioid issue and the homeless issue and the addiction issue and all of these things, but we're not doing anything in the beginning.
We're trimming the weed, but leaving the root intact.
Yeah.
And that problem
So
continues.
what are the Greens going to do?
Well, Greg, we're going to actually deal with the root problem. Like, I'm really, really tired of the fact, you know, I just retired just this past week officially. And I'm really tired of the fact that over 30 years of policing, I've never seen an advancement really on affordable housing. We have just as many people waiting for affordable and supportive housing as what there are on it. I've never seen anything really make a dent in the mental health situation. And I have a question for you, Greg. If I said to you, you give me $1, and within a couple of years, you know, a year or two, I'm going to give you $7 back. That's a pretty good investment.
Yeah.
How many dollars would you give me?
As many as I could possibly find.
And up to the point that I say, I'm at my maximum.
Yeah,
I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
That's the kind of investment we need to do with mental health and homelessness and housing. Because by not paying that dollar up front, I am taking people, well, I have been taking people, sometimes the same person 3 times a week, sometimes 4 or 5 times a month, and for years on end, from their homes in mental states, and these are not nice homes either, sometimes rooming houses and what have you, or they're homeless. And we're taking them to the hospital to, you have paramedics, you have intake nurses, the triage people, doctors, you have the psychiatrists come down and talk to them there to find out if they're an immediate harm to themselves or not. And if they're not an immediate harm to themselves or to someone else, you say, okay, you're back out on the street. And we'll pay about $7,000 per visit, and we're taking them in there, you know, some just a few times a month, but some as many as 20 times a month. You add that all up, that's a lot of money. And we're flushing it down the toilet because we don't have the courage and the bravery to do the right thing and treat these people with compassion and give them the help they need up front. And, you know, it's easy. For me, I remember 20 years at least thinking that I want to be a fiscal conservative, so I'm not going to give my money to that, without realizing that really what I'm doing is by judging the situation like that, not having the compassion for it, I'm actually hurting myself and everyone else.
Sure, you're paying 10 times more at the end.
Yes.
You know.
So that is what I think we need to do. The Green Party is certainly going to take these issues seriously, and we're going to make some headway on them.
Good. Absolutely, that's great. The improving government accountability is our final pillar. I think it's evident by the polls. Ontarians unilaterally are concerned about government accountability. The Auditor General has given scathing commentary on the annual report every December that she's put out in the last few years.
Yeah.
She is, by the way, an appointee of the Liberal government. She was appointed to the Auditor General. So she's truly has to take an independent view of things. So on the hydro issue, where they borrowed billions of dollars to reduce hydro rates by 25%, and that our kids will pay it back. You know, I appreciate that from my kid. My kids aren't too happy with me because I say thank you very much, but
You owe them.
yeah, well, they're going to have a tough time getting it out of me, I'll tell you. But you know, we're going to have to pay $40 billion back.
Yeah.
And what they did is they put it into the Hydro's debt, Hydro One's debt, so that they didn't have to count for it as provincial debt.
Yes.
It's still our debt.
It's just
right?
hiding which
Doesn't
shell
really-
the
yeah.
pea's under.
So, but the point is, the Auditor General wasn't saying that was illegal. You know, all of the accounting firms at the government site says, oh, no, it's appropriate, it's right, it's All they were doing is validating that was legal accounting procedure. It's just it wasn't right. The Auditor General says it might be legal, but is it appropriate to hide debt from those who owe it and disguise it as something else? Because it's not. It's our debt. How do we fix government accountability? You talked a little bit about it, about what happens, the wayward ways of politicians once they get elected.
Well,
How do we keep them focused on making sure everything is transparent, David?
I think power does have a tendency to corrupt. It's an adage that is true. We've seen it. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. The centralization of power that we have with political parties leading to the leader basically having their little puppets underneath of them, just touting the party line rather than representing the constituents to government. That's been the slope that we've started probably in about the 50s, increasingly more in the 70s, and now it's reaching a critical mass where we're just seeing this always happen. We're seeing it at every level of government, especially federally, but we're seeing it provincially. So I do believe it comes down to electing better people. I don't think that if you elect someone who's a little bit more cream of the crop, that they are always going to go as sour as when you start with someone that maybe is in it for power and putting their special interest forward. You elect more common people that just have an understanding of goodness and fairness, that are willing to listen to others and to learn, to talk to the trades, talk to the teachers, talk to the doctors, talk to the nurses, talk to the advocates against poverty. Find out what works and then do it. I am an idealist, but I do believe it can happen. It is always with somebody making an effort and a push. It's how women get the right to vote. It's how blacks get the right to vote. That is how we start to get fairness in wages. And we still have work to do with that. But it's any progress that we've ever made, Greg, has always been because of an idealist with sticking to it like a pit bull in a bone.
I think so. I tell politicians all the time, especially wannabe politicians or those who are seeking public office, the reality of it is, from our perspective, in a democracy, when the people elect one of their own to go and serve and represent them, there's really only one obligation you have to us, the voters, is you have to be a good steward of the public purse. You have to make sure that I get the best value for my money that the government decides to spend. And I think oftentimes that is forgotten. You can kiss as many babies as you want and shake as many hands and go to as many parties as you want, but core responsibility of being with that fiduciary responsibility you take on my behalf is really important, and we don't often see it.
Being as, we're talking business primarily here, I'm wanting to raise the issue of, benefit businesses, businesses that can and should be able to be registered so that it's obvious to anyone investing in that company or dealing with that company that they are going to be considering the environment, they're going to be considering the best needs of the employees as well as making money. But shareholders and investors would understand that when they're investing in this company has a sense of ethics and morality, that they're not looking just to make the money. They want to make money, but they want to do it in a moral way that is good to the employees and is not going to harm the environment.
I think there's lots of there's I can't think of company names offhand, but there's lots of great stories out there of big companies who do. I've got a story of a local manufacturer, steel worker right here, who has a fabrication company, not big, 30, 40 employees, pumps out steel, uses all kinds of energy. It's very hardcore, it's welding, it's dirty, it's all the things that the Green Party might look at and go, ooh, he's carbon neutral.
Yeah. In Guelph, they're building homes that are carbon neutral, and they're not any more expensive than a regular home.
Exactly.
So if you can do it for the same price, why aren't we? And I think it's often because
this guy would tell you.
education.
This guy would tell you that it's put money in his pocket because he saves so much money on. He reduced his natural gas consumption by 90%. Went from $9,000 a month to $900 a month. like
It's the smart thing to do
amazing.
for him,
Of
for
course,
sure.
of course, he still pumps out the same stuff.
So why don't we build homes that
yeah.
give the advantages
No, I
to the
know.
purchasers the same way?
It's about having that strong moral conscience of yourself and others around you, and you know, I just think that oftentimes, you know, somewhere along the way, people lose their way, and I think our system is at fault to some degree, but you know, it just paints a totally different picture when people get there, and it's a shame that happens. But in any event, do you think that technology is at a stage right now where if the government was coming out with really big spending sprees, the budget, for example, that we're at the stage now where a government could go out and accurately gauge public opinion on it before they enact anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I don't think we always have to resort to polls that only call people with landlines and things like that. But we have a world that's very connected and very engaged. And when people are heard and you give them the opportunity to speak, they will talk.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why we can't have a better pulse on what society is wanting. A lot of times they can't say it through voting, they feel, because they have to strategically vote for a party they don't like to try to avoid one that they really dislike. And then nobody really knows how they feel because what they really support isn't getting on the ballot box, it's not being counted. And that, I feel, is really sad. More and more people are getting upset with that whole approach. They realize they're never going to get what they want that way.
You think we should have proportional representation?
Well, absolutely. You know what, Craig, if you knew that you could vote for Party B, and that if Party B didn't win outright right off the bat, your vote could
Counted.
be, you know, not being used to advance a party that you absolutely disliked because you've got another party, you know, that got hindered. Now, if everybody could just vote for what they really, really wanted, and in that percentage we got it, our government would accurately reflect what people are voting and wanting.
Well, the Greens would have 7% of the seats in the House.
Yes, absolutely. And with our current first past the post system, you can have 51% of the ridings where a party just wins by a few votes over a second party, and they get a majority government with those 51% of the seats. But in the other 49 ridings, that party that won might actually have no support hardly, and the one that they had beat just barely in those 51% of the ridings
Might have won the
might
other.
have won by a landslide in the others. So we could have an overwhelming amount of support for a party that doesn't win, and we can have a party that has much less support win a majority.
Yeah.
You get a majority with 39% of the vote, and you've also got maybe 20% of the voters, 10% of the voters that vote for something, and they get nothing.
Yeah.
And where's their voice?
Exactly.
And you don't have to win, but you should be heard.
Yeah.
And for the Greens to have a voice in government where we could speak up and talk about a better way to do energy,
Yeah.
I think it would be very important for that and any other issue.
Yeah.
You know, it makes our democracy much more healthy when it represents the voters as the voters see fit.
Yeah. No, good points, David. Good points. I want to give you an opportunity to speak to the constituents now of your riding, Kitchener South-Hespeler. So if you wouldn't mind looking at the camera and tell them exactly why they should vote for David Weber.
Right. Well, I've worked in Waterloo region, I've worked in Cambridge, and I live in the riding as well. And I understand what's going on here, firsthand ringside seats by policing and being involved in all kinds of walks of life and all kinds of situations. I have a heart that does want to do the right thing, and I'm willing to listen to you to know what that right thing is and to represent you. Another NDP, conservative or liberal, is going to be another representative of their party for you, and each have some great ideas. But I will not be whipped by a leader. I will not be representing the party line. I can represent you and will be accountable to you directly. Nothing is going to improve our House of Commons, our Queen's Park. This is provincial election or Queen's Park. Nothing is going to improve it more than if we elect one, two, or a few Greens to speak with a different voice, representing you with sincerity. And I will be accountable to you, and I would really appreciate your support. I believe I deserve it, and we deserve a chance to have something different.
There you go. You heard it. And we hope these videos will help you make an informed decision on June the 7th. We encourage you to reach out, talk to the candidates, ask questions on issues that affect you most. And please, on June the 7th, please vote. I'm Greg DeRocher for the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for watching.